Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 42 of the Sophie Art Podcast, which is a little podcast I do about art and things. And this one is going to be all about planning, and it's quite funny because I did a lot of planning for this episode, but as I've sat down to record it, I thought instead I would just forget about the plans and make it a bit more spontaneous. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick through my passion planner, which is a little sort of diary thing, and I'm just going to go through it and talk about some of the plans I've done and things I've learnt and stuff. So that's this week's main topic. We've also got the little art tip of the week, which is all about reflective light. We've got the book, and it's the little art tip is actually number 19, because I've started part of the planning thing. I've started writing lists so that I know what number of things are, and this is actually the 19th little art tip. So there's quite a lot of them really. And the book is number 6, and it is Paddington's New Room by Michael Bond, and it's a Paddington Bear book, but it's more about the type of book really than the actual book. So that's this week's book. And then we also have a new feature on this episode, and it's called The Fascinating Fact. And it's going to be little facts where I look at things to do with art, spiritual stuff, and transgender things. And this first fascinating fact is all about thoughts. So that's coming up on this week's episode. I'm going to be doing them totally unedited from now on. The last episode was the first one where I didn't do any editing, and whilst it was a bit scary, and it still feels a bit scary now, it is actually very liberating to know that I haven't got to do the editing. And also it's weird because even though you're a bit more scared, because you know that if you mess up you're going to keep recording, in a weird way it makes you a bit more relaxed really. So I'm going to keep doing that, and the reason I did that was because I wanted to try and save some time, because editing was taking so long, and I don't really enjoy editing as much as I do creating things. So I'm doing an experiment at the moment to see if this works, and I've decided to do, the podcast used to be every week, it's now going to be for the moment every other week, and that's just so that I can do some more, or I can start doing YouTube videos. But I'm not sure, but I think I might still be able to do it weekly. I'm gonna see how it goes, but you can find show notes and everything at sophielawson.com, and you can find my YouTube videos at youtube.com/sophielawson. Bing bong! Hello, it's Sophie from the future here. It's now a few days after I recorded this episode, and I just popped in as I wanted to add something to the end of the episode after the music, because the night after I recorded this episode I woke up to do my studying, and I thought, shall I go back to bed instead? And I wrote about it and asked my automatic writing, and it said yes, go back to sleep. So I did, and I had the most intense lucid dream experience where I got sucked into a black hole. It was so intense that I couldn't get back to sleep, and instead I decided to record a little audio about it, which I've now turned into a little video on my YouTube at youtube.com/sophielawson. But this lucid dream experience made me realise I need to prioritise sleep. But I think part of the process of planning is trying things, seeing what works, what doesn't, and tweaking it till you find balance. So I just thought I'd pop in and say that because I think it's kind of cool. And I hope you enjoy this one. Bing bong! But before we jump into this week's main topic, which is about planning, I thought it'd be quite funny. Well, it's not funny, but I thought it'd be quite fun to talk about two things that happened last week, which are kind of related to planning. And it's something I've noticed is that the universe is very funny sometimes. It's it's like a trickster, and it's easy to say that these are all coincidences, but I don't think they are. When things keep happening like that, at some point it feels like it's like spontaneity. I feel like it is the universe like playing with you. So I had two things last week. The first thing, because with my planning, something I wanted to do was I wanted to start running again in 2019. So I was trying to plan how to start running, but I also want to do all these other things. And so running was one of the things that I dropped because I thought I'd rather do all these other things like drawing and stuff. So I dropped running, and then on New Year's Day, I had to go to work, and I normally ride my bike to work. So I went downstairs to get on my bike, and I had a puncture, and I didn't have enough time to fix the puncture. And because it was New Year's Day, I couldn't get a bus or anything. So I just decided to start running to work that day, and I thought there was no way I was going to make it. But what was funny was it only took me 10 minutes longer than on the bike, and it wasn't actually that bad. The only thing that was wrong, the only thing I did wrong on that first one was that I ran with my bra because I've never like been running with a bra or something, and it got so like sweaty which wasn't nice. But then that was even a good thing because it meant I went to work, and it's the first time I've ever been at work without wearing a bra. So even that, I was able to like prove to myself that I don't have to wear a bra to work. So there were so many good things that come out of this, and what ended up happening was I ended up thinking to myself, I would rather walk to work than ride my bicycle, and I can run home anyway. So the fun thing is now, I'm only like taking an extra 20 minutes, or it's probably about 40 minutes to get to and from work, but I can now run home from work. So I've now got a way of running whilst not really, it's not really taking up that much time. So it felt like the universe was helping me on that one, and I found it just really funny. And it was also good because the thing with planning is I feel like they have to be blueprints. I don't think, because things happen out of your control, so plans have to be blueprints, and that really showed me that day that you can plan as much as you want, but the universe is always in control. And something else happened a couple of days later. I think it was the next day actually, it was the Wednesday, and again, because it happened straight after it, I just felt like the universe is saying, look, plan as much as you want, but I am in control here. So what I've done is there's a certain day each week that I've planned, and that day is going to be just recording podcasts and creating a video, and then the week after is going to be when I edit the video, edit the podcast. So that's the way I can do videos and podcasts. But what I did was I planned this day to do the podcast. I got everything set up. I was really excited. I sat down, just about to start recording, and these builders like barged in the back garden, their radio blaring music, and like you could hear them on the microphone. So I thought, okay, there's no way I can record a podcast. And in that moment, I wasn't quite as adaptable because I sat there for about 30 minutes just thinking, well, what do? I need to record this podcast. And I ended up getting a little bit frustrated with that one. And then I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll do drawing today instead of recording the podcast. And then I sat down on my desk about to start drawing, and I thought, no, I've got to prove that I can record things even if it's not perfect, because otherwise if you can't do that, you may never end up being able to do something. Because what if builders come in every single day? You would never be able to do it in that case. So you're going to have to be doing things when it's not quite perfect. But I thought, well, I'll do the podcast tomorrow, but I'm still going to record a video because I'd promised myself that I would do a video, and the camera wasn't really picking up the audio, so I still did the video, and I felt a lot happy. Like at the end of that day, when I wrote about what I'd done and stuff, I felt really quite satisfied because it felt like even though things didn't go the way I wanted, I still managed to do what I wanted, or like I still achieved one of the things. So I just felt like that day, those couple of experiences were quite fun, and they were really like teaching me that plans have to be blueprints and you have to be adaptable. So that was just two little things that happened. And then something that also came out of that was I thought, well, if this happens again, what if I have a week where I can't record podcasts because of noise or something? And I thought, well, what I could do is I can just record it at night time, because I always get up at midnight to study. But I thought, because it's quite quiet at that time, and I thought if it comes to it, I could just record the podcast at night. So there's always a way, really. Like, no matter what obstacle you get, I think there's always a way to overcome it. So I just learnt a lot in those two little experiences, and none of that was planned. So that's why I think it's really important to be spontaneous as well and adaptable. But I was just going to talk about my passion planner and also Wunderlist, and they're the two things I spoke about on the last podcast, and also like a little diary that I use at night time. So for the past few years I've been keeping a little diary, and at the end of each day I will just write down the main highlights and lowlights from the day. And I always used to put in that if I did any drawing, I'd write down that I did what I drew and stuff, just so that I could track how much I was drawing. So that's now gone into the passion planner, and I thought I was going to do away with that diary, but I realised that I quite enjoy just sitting in bed for 10 minutes, like thinking about the day and what happened, and the diary is a perfect thing for that, because you can scribble in it and it doesn't matter if it's all messy. Whereas with the passion planner, I feel like I need to keep it a bit tidy, and that was a problem I had at the start. I didn't want to use it because I didn't want to ruin it. So that was a bit silly, really. But so what I did was I planned everything on sheets of paper before I knew exactly how I wanted to do it, and then I put that into the passion planner. So, but the diary is good, and what I'm doing with the diary is I'm tracking social stuff, really. So like, because one of my things I want to improve is my social skills. So any time during the day, if I do something that has a negative thought or positive thought, I try to remember that, and at the end of the day I write it all down so that I can try to work out ways to improve things and stuff. So that diary now is really just tracking any time I talk to somebody, like any positive encounter with people and any negative encounter. And I'm finding that it's actually quite a confidence thing, because you notice that it's much easier to talk to people than you think, and you also notice that you're talking to a lot of people without actually realising it. It's only when you start becoming aware of it that you realise that actually I'm talking to quite a lot of people, and most of the time, in fact all of the time, it's always like positive. So it sort of motivates you as well, because you think tomorrow because one of my little things, I have this little challenge every day, and it's to talk to a random stranger, and that's like one of my fun things to do. And again, the universe seems to help you with that, because sometimes you'll be walking along and some random person will come up and you'll talk to them and you'll just think, and it's such a weird thing. Like what happened the other day, something happened. I approached the doors at where I work, and just as I got there, these people were coming out, but the door was jammed, so we couldn't get in, and it was like the perfect opportunity for me to talk to somebody. And the first thought was, I'm not going to say anything, and then you think, well, the challenge is I have to talk to somebody. And then you just say something, and then you start realising this isn't that hard. It's still scary, but it's not that hard. And also, I'm convinced that a lot of people are thinking the same thing anyway. That a lot of people are thinking, I want to talk or something, I want to say something, but I can't. So you start to realise that it's not just you that's going through this, really, like social anxiety thing. But So that's a fun thing. But the passion planner is I'm using it mostly to track art things, and like my meditation and stuff like that. So the passion planner, I'll put links to everything in the show notes, but this is the first year that I'm using one, and it starts out and it asks you these questions of what is your lifetime goal, 3 years, 1 year, 3 months, and then you write down a load of things. You have like a 5-minute time limit, so you're sort of under pressure. And the reason that's good is because if you had too much time to think about this, you would start saying, I can't do that because it's not possible. But because you haven't got any time to think, what I noticed was I just listed a load of things, and I thought, I didn't even know I wanted to do that. And then you think about it and you think, actually I do want to do that. So I could talk about one of them, but one of the things I wrote down was I want to interview guests on the podcast. And then once it was all finished, I didn't even really realise what I had wrote down. And then when I read back through it, I thought, did I actually write that? And then, because on the next page it says, take one of these, they called it a game changer. Take one of these things that you want to do, and they said take the one that has the most like emotional energy to it. Take that and then pull it apart and see how you can make that become real. So I thought, well, the one that makes me feel the most is this interviewing guests on the podcast. And it makes me feel that because it's such a scary thing, but it's also something I really want to do. So, well, what I did was I pulled that across and I pulled it apart, and then it's basically making you come up with little goals that will get you closer to that. So that was quite an interesting little exercise, but I'm still really scared to do that, and I haven't started doing anything that thing done because I'm a bit afraid of that, but I'm sure it will come in time. It's just scary, that. So that was a fun way to start, and then what it does then is it has, each month has blocks, so you can see from a distance what the month is going to be all about, and then each week has a big block of time where you can just fill it in with daily lists. So this is where the Wunderlist comes in, which is this app, and I spoke about it last week, or on the last episode, and what I said was my Wunderlist was full of so much stuff that I couldn't even use it, and I went in and I was trying to sort it all out, but the thing is, a lot of the stuff in there I want to keep because it's things I want to do, and it was just taking so much time. In the end I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a whole new folder called Days, and I'm going to forget about all this other to-do list stuff because it's so overwhelming trying to sort it out. I'm just going to leave it there and pretend that it doesn't exist for the moment. So what I've done is I've got this list in Wunderlist called Days, and if something comes up and I think I want to draw, say I think I want to draw a character from an anime, I can write that down on the day that is supposed to be a drawing day. So this is really good because it means when I come to my passion planner, because everything is already written in Wunderlist, it's much easier to know what I'm doing. So it means I'm not spending any time trying to work out what I'm doing. It's all just happening quite sort of seamlessly, really. But it has been really hard to work it all out. And the first week or so, or last week, it got a bit overwhelming because I was trying to do stuff, and because I hadn't done it before, I didn't know how long stuff took. So I found myself overrunning, and something I've noticed is it's really hard for me to stop doing things. So if I'm in the middle of doing something and the time runs up, I keep continuing, and what I should be doing is saying time is up, I have to move on now. So that's the main thing I'm struggling with. And something that the passion plan is really good for is it's got a little space where you can do whatever you want on each week. So what I've done is I've turned that space, they call it the space of infinite possibility, I've turned that space into a week review space, and I've created 3 little columns, and what I've put one column is awareness, one column is why, and then another column is action. And this is where I can review the week to see what's not been working and what has, and I can work out why it hasn't been working, and I can come up with like an action on how I can try to improve it. And I think if I keep doing that each week, by the end you would get to a point where everything would be like flowing much easier. So what I do is, in the planner, I've colour coded everything so that anything to do with art is pink. So I take all my to-dos out of Wunderlist, stick them into the passion planner, and it's under the thing of art, and then one of them is like drawing exercises. So if I do drawing exercises on that day, I colour it in pink. So pink is art, then lilac is anything to do with personal stuff like stretches, social interactions, affirmations and stuff, and then blue is anything to do with spiritual stuff, so like meditating and automatic writing. And so what I can do is, at the end of the week, I can look, and I can, because it's all colour coded, I can easily see what I haven't been doing. So when I got to the end of the week, I noticed that I wasn't getting to sleep on time, because one of my things on tracking is what time I'm going to sleep, because I want to have enough sleep so I can practice lucid dreaming. And I noticed I wasn't getting to sleep. It says here I only got to sleep on time 2 out of the 7 days, and then it says why, and it said kept running late on tings. So the action is finish an hour earlier. So what I'm doing now is I'm shortening everything by an hour, and I'm going to see if that works. So like next week I'm going to have to see how that works, but so far it's worked 1 out of 3, so it's still not working. So I need to improve on that. And this is the thing, I think it's just iterating. I think with planning, you have to plan everything, but you have to review it as well, because otherwise things could get out of control, really. So that's just what I'm doing at the moment. And then the good thing about this passion planner is, at the end of the month, it has a load of stuff that is called monthly reflection, where it asks you a bunch of questions. So one of the questions is, what was the most memorable part of this month? And describe it. So I'm going to really enjoy doing that, and I think if I write that without thinking too much, it might be able to guide the future, like the goals that you set for the next month. So whilst it's been quite difficult and stuff, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm starting to notice like the benefits of it, because I'm getting a lot of stuff done. And the other thing is, I always thought with planning like this it would be quite limiting, but I'm finding it quite freeing, because it means when I do my drawing, as long as I do my drawing, when I'm not doing my drawing I'm okay because I've done my drawing. Whereas before I was doing any planning, like if I wanted to sit down and watch an anime, I would always feel guilty, because I'd think, well, I got to be doing my drawing. But if I know that I'm doing my drawing, and I know that I'm like achieving all the things I want to do, then it's much easier to sit and watch an anime, because you've already done that. But something else I've done, which I think is quite good, is I'm like sticking things together. Because I think if you stick things together, it's much easier to make them a habit. So like, what I've done is I do my stretches right in the morning after automatic writing. Whereas because my automatic writing, I've already got that as a habit, part of that habit is now to do stretching afterwards. Whereas if I tried to do stretching at some other point, I feel like it probably wouldn't have worked, because I would have had to have made time for stretching, whereas it's much easier to stick things on to what you're already doing. So what I've also done with that is, because I want to watch more anime, because I think if I'm watching anime, I always used to watch anime right at the very start when I started drawing, and I'd always draw the anime characters, and I really miss doing that. So I want to try and bring that back in. So what I've done is, when I'm eating my dinner, I now watch a 20-minute anime, and it kind of works because the amount of time it takes to eat is about the same time as watching an anime. So, like, if I wasn't watching an anime, I've still got to eat. So I would have only ended up watching random YouTube videos. And the good thing is I've been able to watch almost the entire season of Steins. So that's really good. And Steins is an anime about time travel. And this week's inspirational quote is actually from an episode of Steins. So even that's quite good, because you're not only watching it for fun, you're getting inspired by it as well. And that's something I have planned for this year, is to do more things that are going to inspire me. And I want to study more like inspirational artists and do master studies and stuff, because I feel like when you're drawing other artists' work, I feel like that's when you learn the most, really. So I'm just planning all this stuff in, and what I noticed was, before I did the planning, I wanted to do all these things, but I wasn't doing anything because I wasn't planning it. Whereas now I'm starting to do the things I want to do, like YouTube videos. I've already started doing a new inspirational artist, so I'm already seeing that I'm getting things done. So that's really good, and I just really wanted to talk about planning on this week's episode, because I feel like, I guess what I wanted to say is, the Passion Planner is really quite amazing, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think Wunderlist is an amazing app for tracking to-do lists, and it works on everything. I'll put links and everything in the show notes. Something else I've also done is I made a little spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet I've created like a list of, I'm gonna do it each month, and what it is it's a list of what I want to do for each month, like what I want to create. What I'm doing, the reason that's good is because you know, I put like dates on everything with titles and everything, so I know when I want things to be achieved by. So that means each week I'm basing what I'm doing off of getting these things done. So everything just sort of comes together, again, because you've planned it in advance, and it sort of comes together like magic. But it isn't, it's because you've planned it. So I think planning is good, but that sound means it is time for this week's little art tip. And something I've also done is I've gone and counted how many little art tips there are, and this week's little art tip is number 19, and it's all about reflective light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of these little art tips into YouTube videos, which is what I wanted to do at the very start, but like I said before, because I hadn't planned to do it, I haven't done them yet. But today's going to be the first one. I'm going to do little art tip number 1, but this one, number 19, is all about reflective light. And this is quite an interesting thing, and it's reflective light should always be darker than anything on the light side. And I really think this would make a good video, but on svslearn.com, which is the website I'm studying from, I just finished the light and shadow course, and they did this thing on there which I thought was really, really good. And what they do is they had a drawing of like a sphere with the light, shadow and dark side and shadow side, blah, blah, blah. That's funny. So what they did was they got like a little sphere with a light side, the shadow side, the cast shadow and the reflective light. And what he did was he was doing it on the computer, and he took the eyedropper and he picked up a bit of the reflective light and he coloured it in on top of the light side. And what was amazing was the reflective light was so much darker than what it appeared. And the reason is because anything that's light, if it's surrounded by dark, it's going to look a lot lighter. So it's like an illusion. And what I loved about this was it kind of proves that reality is an illusion, because your mind is tricking you into thinking that it's darker than it is, or lighter than it is. And I just found that really quite interesting. So this week's little art tip is to always remember that the reflective light is darker than anything on the light side. And a good way to check that on a computer is using the eyedropper. And if you're doing it traditionally, you could just walk back, because the further away you get, the more you can see the lights and darks. So that's this week's little art tip. We've got the book, and this is number 6, and it's Paddington's New Room by Michael Bond, and it's a Paddington Bear book, like a kid's book. And this is actually more about, this book is more about it being a kid's book, really. So something I've started doing as well is I'm starting to read kids' books, because I love sketching out the characters in the kids' books, because they're nice, like, basic shapes, and I find them quite inspiring and fun to draw. It's quite relaxing, and Paddington Bear was actually quite fun to draw. So on the one thing, it's good to read these if you want to just have some fun things to sketch, but also it's good because you're getting ideas for stories. So if you wanted to write some stories or something, it's quite a fun way to get some stories, because with kids' books, what I've noticed is they're telling really important stories or really important life lessons, but in really simple little short stories. So it's quite interesting to me. And this one is all about Paddington Bear, and what happens is he's currently sleeping in a not so good room, and the family have promised him a new room, but nobody's got round to doing it. So they all go out for the day, and he thinks, well, I think he just thinks, sod it, I'm going to do it. So he goes into the room and he starts painting it, but he makes a complete mess of it. So it's a funny little story about him making a mess of it, but he is doing his best. And then when everyone comes home, he thinks he's going to be in trouble, but it ends up turning out quite nice, because the bloke who was supposed to decorate the room for him, he couldn't be bothered to do it, and that's why he wasn't doing it. And then the lady who wanted the room decorated, so the bloke who was supposed to do it couldn't be bothered, so he's happy, because what they decide to do is they decide to get a builder in to fix, like, Paddington's mess. So he's happy because he now hasn't got to do it. The woman's happy because it's finally getting done, and Paddington's going to be happy because he's going to finally get his new room. So it's got like a nice little story about, I guess what it's saying is, if you've got something to do, do it yourself, but you're probably going to mess it up. But if you do mess it up, it's going to be alright, because everything is always alright in the end. And that's a bit like life. You're probably going to mess it up, but everything will be alright in the end. So that's what I took away from this book, is to just do your best and see what happens. I think that's the story of life. Everyone will be happy in the end. So that's this week's little book. It's Paddington's New Room by Michael Bond. And I think really what I wanted to say was, if you haven't done it for ages, like, maybe find a kid's book and just start reading it, and it's really quite fun. And these are only 25p. I've been picking up these little kids books in the second-hand shop for 25p, so it's like super cheap, and it's just really fun. You can get a nice little story out of it, and you can do some sketching as well. So that's this week's little book. This week's fascinating fact, we've got a new sound effect for this one, and it is which I think is quite funny. And this week's fascinating fact is going to be all about the mind, and it's all about thoughts. So the fascinating fact is, how many thoughts do we have in a day? And this one actually I found very fascinating. And fascinating fact number 1 is, according to the National Science Foundation, the average person has between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. Of those, 95% are exactly the same repetitive thoughts as the day before, and about 80% are negative. And what I think about that is, it makes me wonder, where are all these thoughts coming from? And then also, that's like 60,000 thoughts that we're not even aware of. They're like running in the background, and if they're all negative, that's probably why we all struggle trying to change things, really. I think because we've got all these thoughts in the background being in control, really. So that's why I think awareness is so key, because with lucid dreaming especially, you start to realise that your thoughts are creating your reality. So if your thoughts are 95% negative, that means you're going to have a 95% chance of negative reality. So I just think this is it shows how important it is to get in control, or at least become super aware of your thoughts. Because if you become aware of them, I said before, like, awareness is the start of change. If you can become aware of it, then you can start changing it, and hopefully you can change that 95% or 80% of negative thoughts into positive. So that's this week's fascinating fact, and I think that's it for this week's episode. You can find show notes and stuff at sophiedawson.com. You can find YouTube videos at youtube.com/sophiedawson. This week's inspirational quote actually goes to a character from the anime Steins, and Steins is all about time travel, and episode 18, I think it's episode 18, it's all about gender and time travel. And I love this episode, and it actually covered something that I've thought about before, which is making a story about a character who goes back in time or to another timeline and basically changes their gender. And I think that would be fascinating to see what would happen. So that's what that episode is about. And one of the main characters, OKABE, he's talking to this transgender character, and he says a really nice quote. He says, "What you are doesn't matter, it's who you are." OKABE from Steins. Hello, this is Sophie Dawson from sophiedawson.com, and this is a little video about lucid dreaming. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I've just had a pretty intense dream that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to talk about it now whilst I'm still fully in it, but I'm still half asleep really. So I'll probably put this to some sketching or something as I'm talking. But I just had a lucid dream where I actually went into a black hole, and so what happened was the alarm went off at 12 o'clock at midnight, which is when I normally do my studying. But I was so tired because I'd gone to bed late that I decided I was not going to do any studying tonight, and instead I was going to go back to bed. So I went back to bed at 1 o'clock, having done a little bit of reading, and I found myself in a dream where I was in this like office block or something with a load of people, and suddenly all the people got up and walked out the door and left me on my own, and I was still in just a regular dream. And I got up and I walked over to the window and thought, this is just like a dream. And then I think I was holding a book, and I threw it through the window, but it went right through the window into the distance, and I thought, this is a dream. So that's when I became aware that I was dreaming. So I put my head through the window and I looked down at the floor below, and I got a little bit of like vertigo from the heights, and I jumped through the window, but I ended up waking up. So I started writing the dream out in my diary, and the pen wasn't working, and I suddenly realised that I was still dreaming inside of a false awakening. So then my goal for lucid dreaming at the moment is to meet my nan in the dream, because I want to talk to her about my childhood. So I started shouting out my nan inside of this dream, but it was all darkness, it was pitch black. So what I did was I started visualising walking up to my nan's house, and I knocked on her door, walked up her steps, and I ended up in her front room, and I jumped through the mirror, but I realised as I jumped through the window my face was a bit different in the mirror. So I pulled myself back out of the mirror, everything was out of focus, and I suddenly woke up again. So I wrote that dream out, only to realise that I was still dreaming again. And at this point, I jumped out the window. I think I woke up again, so I'm now on my fourth false awakening. So I thought to myself, I thought about jumping out the window again, but I thought if I jump out the window, the same thing is going to happen again. So I thought, what do I do if I want to stabilise the dream? And I remembered that I have to start spinning. So I started throwing myself into a spin in a clockwise direction. And it got really the spin got really a lot of momentum. And I think it must have frightened me or something, because I woke myself up from it. At this point, I think I was awake, but I was still half asleep, and I was lying in bed thinking, I was trying to remember everything so that I could write it down, but I thought that spinning felt so like powerful, I guess. I thought, I'm going to go back into that spinning, so instead of waking myself up, I just lied in bed and put myself back into that spin, at which point I ended up getting into the spin, but the spin was getting really violent, and I don't really know how I didn't wake myself up, but it was getting more and more and more and more violent, until suddenly this black dot appeared in front of me, and I'm still spinning, but I could see below me what I felt like is a load of planets, and I was spinning in the same rotation with all these planets, and I realised that we were all spinning around this black hole, and the spinning was still really quite violent, but the thing is, I could totally feel my body lying in bed whilst being inside of this experience. So I keep spinning, and I had this thought, and I don't know whether I thought that I wanted to, or whether I thought that I had no choice, but that I was going to end up getting into, but I knew that I was going to end up going into this black hole. So I thought to myself, I said, "Hang on tight, Sophie," and then a voice suddenly said, "No, let go." And I realised that as I was spinning, I could feel to my left that my hands, it was as if my body was spinning. It was more that my mind is spinning and my body is just going along for the ride. That's what it felt like. But it felt like my arms were what's it called? Failing. You know, like my arms were just floating about behind me, but they were grabbing onto things. That's what it felt like, and it felt like almost they were acting as like anchors, sort of trying to hold me back. So when that voice said, "No, let go," I just suddenly thought, yeah, I've got to stop. I've got to let go of my arms. So I let my arms go, almost as if I like detached my arms from the spinning, and suddenly this black hole started getting closer. And then as it got closer, the spinning got more violent, but also I could feel the force of the black hole pulling me. So I'm now, not only am I getting pulled in the clockwise spinning, I'm also it felt like I was getting stretched like as the black hole got closer and closer, I could feel myself getting stretched, and it was getting so intense that I felt like I honestly felt like I was going to get ripped to shreds. That's what it felt like. But I think because I just had 4 false awakenings, some of which were quite frustrating because I was trying to see my nan, but it was so out of focus that was a bit frustrating. And then the other one was like darkness, which was frustrating. And I think I must have just thought, I'm not going to back out of this one, I'm going to keep going. So, and the whole time I could feel my body lying in bed, which was weird. But as everything got more and more violent and extreme, I could feel my breath, and I was really deep breathing, like as if I was gonna die, to be honest. But this black hole got closer and closer, and then it suddenly took up the whole vision. But what was happening was all these planets were spinning. We were all spinning together, but there was also a load of like little orbs all spinning around as well. So everything was spinning. It's as if everything was being controlled by the force of this black hole spinning around. So then the next thing is this black hole consumes my vision. But as it's getting closer as well, it's like, because that stretching feeling, everything was also being stretched around me visually, as if like in a wormhole. So it was as if I was going through a tunnel. Everything was being stretched through this tunnel, and then the black hole consumed the vision, and suddenly I popped out of the other side. The most intense spike of energy that I've ever had, and my breath now was just like proper out, like going like that. And then suddenly on the other side of the black hole was complete silence. There was all of the spinning sensation disappeared. The stretching was completely gone. There was no energy or forces or anything. And all of these little spinning orbs were just now floating about, as if they had been set free, and all of the control had disappeared. And I also felt this complete floatiness, but I could also feel and still hear my breathing. Like I was completely out of breath, and that energy, it was such an intense spike that I had to wake up. I still couldn't, it's like I couldn't stay in that place because I was just feeling too like energized really. And then I woke up and I just lied in bed and I was thinking, bloody hell. But I knew I was awake. I didn't put the light on. Instead I just stayed in position, because they say if what you want to do is when you wake up, don't move and remember the dreams, because otherwise you'll forget them. And I wanted to make sure I remembered each of the false awakenings. I didn't just want to remember the last bit, I wanted to remember all of it. So as soon as I knew I had enough keywords for each of the dreams, I put the light on. The light worked, so that meant I was fully awake. And then I wrote all my dreams out. I wrote them all out in my dream diary. And what's really amazing is, the moment I had got everything written out that I wanted to, I just burst into tears, because I suddenly realised, well, I've never experienced anything like that before, but I had this feeling of like a connection to the planets. It felt like I suddenly realised, what I thought was, is that feeling of the stretchingness and the extreme force of spinning, which was very like violent. And I just thought to myself, is that what the planets are going through? Are the planets out there right now spinning? And are they violently being spun like that? And I felt a little bit sad for the planets, thinking, have they got to go through that? But then I also thought, if everything ends up going into the black hole in the end, which I think everything will get consumed by the black hole in the end, because I thought if what's going to happen in the end is that everything will end up inside the black hole, maybe all of this spinning and the violentness and like all of the unpleasantness, really. Maybe that will be worth it, because in the end we'll all get to just float about. So I felt just such a weird feeling after that dream, and I was trying to go back to sleep after that, but I couldn't, and I just thought I have got to talk about this, because I thought if I talk about it tomorrow morning or something, I might not remember just how it felt, but that is definitely the most intense lucid dream I have ever had, and it only happened because I decided to go back to bed, because I'm just so glad that I went back to bed, and I'm also so glad that I stuck with that spinning sensation, because it reminded me a little bit of sometimes when I'm doing meditation, I have these like vibration things which I think is to do with out-body experience, but every time it happens I always pull myself back, because it gets a little bit frightening, because it gets like the feeling gets so intense that you start thinking, is this going to actually damage my body or something? So I always pull back, but this was the first time that I had like a bodily sensation like that, and I didn't pull back, and it was pretty intense, really. So I'm gonna think about this one for a long time, and something's definitely happened with that. And I also think it's really important that something said let go, because it felt like to me there was something inside of that dream like telling me what, because if it hadn't said let go, I know that I would have ended up just grabbing onto something, or I would have tightened up, and I probably wouldn't have ended up going into it, because it was the moment that I let go that the black hole started to come closer. So I feel like this was all really about letting go. So that's just a little lucid dream that I've had, and I wanted to share it on this video. And like, I didn't intend to do this video, but I might start doing more lucid dreaming videos, because it was something I wanted to do last year, but I decided that I was going to focus on my art instead. But I think maybe because lucid dreaming and dreams are so powerful that I think it is important to talk about them, because it's when you talk about them that other people can like benefit from it, I think. So I think it is important to talk about them, because it's when you talk about them that you can understand what's going on a bit better. So that's basically a little lucid dreaming experience.